of sight exploring the lives of disabled people in Britain in the first half of the century.
We were awakened by a huge bell ganging, bang, 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 at 6 o'clock in the morning. When the bell went and you had to jump to it and go, if you were late, you were told off. It was prison. There was no other word for it. Because, I mean, all the long corridors and everything was just like a prison. You couldn't escape.
If we did something wrong in the bedrooms, you have to get into right bother. You used to just get punished and everything. When they were naughty, they used to be scrubbing floors all day long, couldn't go out or anywhere. Right punished.
We mustn't slouch along, and we must not speak. If you accidentally walked a little bit too fast, faster than the boy in the front of you, and bumped into him, and you either giggled or passed some comment, my word, that was 50 lines. I must not talk in line.
Before the last war, around 100,000 disabled children were brought up in institutions. Some were written off as mental defectives and sent to mental handicap hospitals. The majority, though, were officially classified as blind, deaf, or crippled, and were placed in institutions segregated according to their disability. Mary Baker was born in Woodlands, Dorset in 1922. From birth, she had a dislocated hip, which led to severe problems in walking. At the age of 10, her mother died, and the authorities sent her away from her father and brothers to be brought up at the Hallowick Home for Crippled Girls in North London.
When I came in through the gates, it was very difficult for me. Had no idea what I was going to do and what the place was like. But it was huge and it was lonely. And as I entered a different life. Nothing seems the same here. Everything is different, but it's a strange feeling. Now, I was brought in here into a bathroom where I was stripped complete. Although I had clean clothes on, they cut my hair short as they could, right above my ears. And then they deloused me, put me in the bath and scrubbed me with carbolic soap. It was very degrading to me. I felt as though the end of the world had come, and so I cried. And then I got out of the bath, they put me all clean clothes on, navy blue knickers, navy blue socks, stockings, and a gym slip, serge, and a serge jumper, and then carted me off to the dining room. When I went to the dining room, they were having tea. I stood there for the matron to tell everybody that I had to have a number, and my number was 29. We were hardly ever called by our first name, only by the girls. If matron wanted you, she called you by 29 or whatever number you had.
Hazel Boucher was born in Scunthorpe in 1928. She was born deaf and was sent to the Yorkshire Institution for the Deaf in Doncaster in 1933.
I came to this school when I was 5 with my mother. My mum and I had to look round the school, and then all of a sudden my mother had gone, she'd disappeared. And I looked round for my mother and I couldn't see her, and I just cried and cried. My mother had gone. I remember having a dummy in my mouth, and I kept looking round for my mum and kept crying and crying.
Even very young children were only rarely allowed to see their parents.
On a Saturday, my mother came, and I remembered it was my mother. It seemed a long time since I'd seen her. She took me to look round the shops in Doncaster. And then when we came back, I realised I was coming back into the school. So I clung onto a lamppost saying, no, no, I don't want to go back to school. I wanted to go home with you. Anyway, she brought me in and went home.
Ted Williams was born in Sheffield in 1915. He was registered blind at the age of 8 and was sent to the Royal Manchester Road Institution for the Blind in Sheffield.
Hello, Ted.
Hello.
Come on in.
I always remember I stood with me couple of fingers in my mouth, just wondering what to do. And then I sort of stood about. One or two of the blind children sort of half bumped into me and said, "Who's this?" And I said, "Williams," in a sort of fading voice, because by that time I was feeling so lonely that, well, I was all but crying. And he introduced himself, he called it Charlie Marsden. And he said he was 7. And he said, "I'll see you in the square." But when I got in the square, I was at an absolute dead loss. And I just stood there a while, and some big 14 or 15-year-old lad accidentally walked into me and said, "Who's this? Are you looking for anybody?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking for Charlie." He says, "Well," he says, "why don't they shout him?" It's a shout at top of your voice, he says. We shout people here when we want them. So I just stood there shouting, "Charlie, Charlie Marsden." And eventually he heard me and followed my voice and found me. And that was the start of a lifelong friendship.
Friendships between the children were very important in helping them to survive in the harsh institutions where they were sent.
And the most place that we felt lonely was in our bedrooms, in the dormitories, because we all used to chat about the things that we'd lost, our mothers, our fathers, and our brothers and sisters. And we all used to cry together, sort of thing, and it was really pitiful. I mean, some of the girls didn't have anyone, and we missed ours that we had and loved. And we wondered when we'd ever see them again. It seemed as though we were put in a place where we would never get out. But at any rate, we used to do this reading and that. Well, I did. And I used to read stories to the girls in the room, because some of them didn't understand how to read. But we used to get on all right. But it was really very lack in love. It was all so disciplined, go to sleep, be quiet, you're not allowed to talk. And if you talked under the bedclothes, and then you were caught doing that. And so really it was sort of one way, there was no love at all.
Evelyn King was born in Wiltshire in 1945. She had cerebral palsy, which meant she had great difficulty in speaking. This communication problem was interpreted by the authorities as severe mental disability. At the age of 5, she was sent to a mental handicap hospital, officially classified as an imbecile.
I used to dream about my poor mum and dad, you know. I never used to go home. I used to miss all that. Never seen home in my life. But every time my mother and father used to come at the afternoon, I was happy then. Brothers and sisters didn't used to allow to come in the villa. They only could look through the windows. But I used to wait for them through the window, but they wouldn't let them come inside. Couldn't do anything, go out or anything, stay inside all the time.
The children were not allowed to go out to school. Instead, they were given a narrow, segregated education within the institution. The schooling given to so-called crippled children was often very basic.
We didn't have the education that we should have had. It was very primitive. It wasn't suitable, really. So even if we had a good brain, we were mental, so to speak. Even if our bodies were bad, so our minds were meant to be the same. The main thing was the religion, because it was a Church of England school. And we went to church 3-4 times a day. I didn't think we should have had all that religion, but we had to have it. And so we accepted it. It was something we had to accept.
What is the picture about? Oh, Helma. Come and write it.
Children in schools for the deaf had to accept that sign language, the natural language of the deaf, was banned in the classroom. Teachers insisted on the oral method of communication.
Tell me what it is about. Good. Go and sit down.
I gradually settled down in school and made friends, and I didn't feel quite so lonely then. And I did pick up learning signing from the other children in the school, and one of my friends was Dennis. When I first came to the school, children couldn't sign. But because my brothers and sisters were all deaf, I learnt the signing from them. And when I came to the school, I taught the children, the boys I would show them the signs for cow, horse, pigs, pussycats, any animals. And they were really interested and they wanted to learn more. When we were in the classroom, we would secretly sign when the teacher had his back to us. He would be writing on the blackboard. And if the teacher did catch us signing, he would wag his finger and tell us off, say signing isn't allowed, it's against the rules.
Discipline was very severe, and children would be punished for the smallest mistakes. These punishments often exploited the children's disabilities.
Now, there was one punishment that one particular teacher used to delight in. And that was, we had a arithmetic frame, what we call arithmetic frame. I've got a miniature one here. And as you see, there's all small, what we call types, denoting various numbers. Now, if the teacher was taking, say, fractions or averages or whatever, and she was trying to instill a particular sum into our heads, and we couldn't get it, we were a bit dense. Now, we were supposed to feel at these types to tell what numbers they were. She used to clamp her hands on the back of our fingers, press them down like that and say, can't you feel what number's that, what number's that? I ask you, how can you feel with her hands clamped on the back of yours, pressing your fingertips into sharp pointed types? Now that was a bad punishment for us because I, being a Braille reader, felt this a lot. because quite often, after the pressure of the fingertips onto the types, the fingers were semi-dead. They were numb for a good half hour. So that if the next lesson happened to be Braille, I was in trouble again because I couldn't feel the dots.
If we did something wrong in the bedrooms, we wet the beds and things like that, you used to get into right bother. Just one morning I got into trouble with night nurse. Used to play air with me because I wet the bed. And I couldn't get myself out. And I shouted, you know how I shout?
Because of her physical disability, Evelyn was unable to get out of bed without assistance.
And I used to try and hold it, but I just sat down, laid down and did it right through. And I used to get into trouble with it, with night stuff.
But the silence rule was the one that we hated most. At the smallest offence, you could be put into Coventry. Now that meant that you must not speak except to a teacher for the period they stated. And which made it worse, the other children must not speak to you, otherwise they got the same punishment. I just said it was unfair. I once got unjustly punished for something that two of us had taken part in. I was punished, but the other boy not. And, part of my punishment was Coventry. And absolutely in spite of myself, everywhere I went I was saying, it's unfair, it's unfair, it's not beastly fair. And I got punished again for talking.
Small wonder they give thanks to God with high hearts for health and strength and daily food. We praise thy name, O Lord.
We stole bread and stuff, anything that we could get, because we were always hungry. The food wasn't sufficient. We used to go down the orchard when we weren't supposed to and fill up our knickers with apples, pears, and just because we had this elastic in our nicks. And one time we had a young girl with a peg leg, and she filled her peg leg up because it was hollow, and that was filled up with fruit. And we all used to escape either to the playroom, and if anybody came, we used to say shy and put it in our lockers. We used to hide. It was very deceitful. We were being brought up wrong that way. Made us steal and the things that we shouldn't have done.
The boys were always hungry. Anyway, the prefect used to make me and 3 or 4 other boys go scrumping apples or pears. There was loads of trees all over this area and pears. There was loads and loads of pears. There's more than there is now. I think they've all been taken up. We used to crawl at night when it was quite dark, come right round this area, through the infants, come into the field and pinch all these apples, fill our pockets up. You'd say, have you got your pocket full? Yes. Have you got enough in your pockets? Yes. And we'd go back to the prefect. He would make us give up all our apples and say, no, we haven't got any more, but we would secretly keep 2 or 3 back for ourselves. The prefect would hand them out. And we would go back to our rooms, we would eat all these apples and pears. But next morning, God, my stomachs, we used to get terrible stomachache. It was awful. We said we'd never pinch any apples again.
Recently, the members of the Southgate Rotary Club tried and succeeded in bringing some happiness into the lives of these handicapped children by arranging a day's outing to Westcliff.
Very rarely were the children allowed out of the institution. Contact with the outside world was often limited to occasional day trips.
The enthusiasm of the children was not affected. They were going to the seaside.
Matron gave us some privileges, but we still had the discipline behind it. And when we went down to the beach, we all had to go in a crocodile style. Everybody kept looking at it. It was terrible.
The happy party arrived at Westcliff, where lunch was provided. Here is one of them eating with great relish and evidently is not ashamed to let anyone know how much she is enjoying it. All the children were naturally eager to walk.
We were allowed to paddle. We couldn't go right in the water because otherwise we would have stripped off in front of everybody, and that was against the rules. We weren't allowed to show our bodies to anybody.
Although crutches are not the best things to use on the sand, these girls overcame the difficulties and all entered into the delights of the seaside.
In them days, they used to stand and stare, and we weren't allowed to turn around and cheek anybody. Otherwise, we would have been punished. So we just had to take it. It was not very nice for any of us, not really.
In fact, children in institutions enjoyed no personal freedoms or individual rights at all.
When we wrote our letters, we wrote them at school, and the headmistress used to pass them back to matron. They used to cross off what we weren't supposed to put in, and we had to put that we loved it there, and everybody was happy, and everything that was really lies. And they were brought back to us, and we had to write them again. And then they were passed again by matron, sealed and sent. I used to write to my father, and I used to write to my grandmother, my mother's mother, and I used to get letters from them. And they were so thrilled that I was so happy in my letters, which were all lies. But we had to do this. They were all censored.
This harsh institutional life with its strict rules and regulations led to acts of defiance.
I've always had a strong sense of what I feel just or unjust. And over the years, you see, these constant small injustices just built up inside you, so that you resented everything. One day I was playing around with a boy, and I bent down quickly and I banged my eye on the corner of the cupboard. Now, these were instances where my resentment used to come to the top. And I'll tell you what I did. I know I shouldn't have done, but still, I stood in front of that cupboard door and I systematically kicked it in. I broke it to splinters. And you can well imagine the punishment I got for that. I got stick, I got a cane, I got lectures. I was made to apologise at least 1,000 times. I was put in Coventry. I was told how wicked I was to break the school's property.
You just get into that big trouble. And you don't answer them back because you have to be careful what you say. Somebody got me upset up the shoot and upset, you know. And I just got hold of the stick and just throw it. And the window cracked. Didn't go right through, just cracked. And the school teacher asked me why I did it. So I told her, because somebody upset me.
Most children were allowed to leave their institution when they reached their late teens. But those like Evelyn King, who were sent to mental handicap hospitals, often never got out. Evelyn has spent her entire life in an institution.
next week, a look at the crucial role played by disabled people during the war. That's next Sunday on 4 at 8 o'clock. A book to accompany the series is now available in bookshops, priced £10.99. There's also a special booklet to go with the programme. For a copy, please send a cheque or postal order for £1, made payable to Channel 4.